Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. Today we are group 6. We will present about our lesson plan that using deep learning elements. The topic that we choose is fractured narrative. That the class that we choose is 7th grade semester 2. Skill focus is writing, and the time allocation we choose for 100 minutes each meeting. For the method and technique that we use, first one, learning objective. By the end of the two meetings, after given example of fractured narrative text, students will be able to identify and analyze key narrative elements through guided reading and group discussion with at least three correct identification per story. The second one, after analyzing sample text, students will be able to compose a 150 until 200 word fracture narrative in a group with a clear structure and at least one creative twist. For the learning media, we can use YouTube video, The True Story of the Three Little Pigs. The next one is printed text of Cinderella and Cinderella. The next one is Google Docs for collaborative writing, LCD projector or smartboard, whiteboard and markers. And the last one is paper for peer feedback. Here are the elements of deep learning that we use. Critical thinking, comparing original and fractured narrative to interpret change meanings. The second one is creativity, rewriting a classic story with a unique twist in point of view, setting, or moral. Collaboration, working in teams to plan, draft, and revise stories. The next one, communication, sharing, presenting, and providing feedback on stories. The next one, reflection, writing self-reflection on how perspective shapes meaning. The last one is real-world connection, linking narrative rewriting to modern media reinterpretation.
Okay, so the next one is about the lesson procedures. We have two meetings actually. So the first meeting, it's about reading and analyzing a fractured narrative. For the first stage, the time is about 25 minutes. The purpose of stage 1 is to activate schema and build understanding of narrative context and purpose. The activities are first, teacher begins by asking what are your favorite childhood stories and how you ever seen those stories retold in a new way. And the second activities is show a short video clip of the true story of the three little pigs. And the next activity is discussion. The discussion might about how does the story differ from the original and who tells the story, what makes it fractured. And the next activity is the teacher introduced the concept of fractured narrative and explains its purpose. Uh, explain to reinterpretation and to build their creativity. And the next activities is students share examples of modern fractured versions in movies or books. For example, it could be Maleficent, Enchanted, etc. The deep learning integration for stage 1 is critical thinking, which is compare different perspective and analyze the author's purpose. And the next is about communication, which is discussion and creates idea sharing and reasoning. The next is stage 2, which consists of 40 minutes. The purpose of stage 2 is analyze genre model and linguistic features. The activities are first, distribute printed copies of Cinderella and Cinderella. Cinderella is the fractured version of Cinderella. And the next activity is read both texts individually. And the next one is work in pairs. Student asked to work in pairs and complete a comparison chart. For example, it's about the orientation, complication, resolution, language features, and the last one is about moral or social message. And the next activity is the teacher leads a class discussion to highlight differences and how the fractured version changes meaning or theme. And the fifth activity is summarizing. The student asked to summarize a fractured narrative changes a traditional story to highlight a new idea, perspective, or moral. And the deep learning integration of stage 2 is critical thinking, which is identify and interpret how stories shift affect meanings. And the next is collaboration, because the student work in pair, and encourage joint understanding. And the next is about stage 3. The times is 25 minutes. The purpose of stage 3 is to plan and conceptualize a new fracture story collaboratively. The activities are first students from groups of 4 to 5, and each group selects a traditional story. It could be a local story or international story. And the third activities is brainstorming, which is it's about how to fracture a story, how to change the POV, the ending, moral, or setting. And the next activity is each group have to create a story outline, consist of the title, the main changes, the key message or theme, language tone, and the last one is about the teacher circulates because the teacher must be giving feedback and encouraging originality. And the deep learn integration in this stage is about creativity and collaboration, which is students develop imaginative reinterpretation. And the next is reflection, because groups justify their creative choices. And before first meeting ending, the the teacher might ask the student to make a homework. The homework is uh, each group have to prepare their first draft of their fractured narrative for the next meeting, for the second meeting.
Okay, next for the meeting two. In the second meeting, the focus of the lesson is on guiding students to create their own fracture narrative. So this meeting builds on what they have learned in the previous lesson, and where they analyze examples and identify the key elements of fracture storytelling. So the first step is stage one, which is recall and reactive prior knowledge. This lesson begins with a short review to help students recall what they have learned before. The teacher greets the class and asks, like, last meeting we explored what a fractured narrative is. So who remember the main difference between a regular and a fractured narrative? And the student will respond orally by mentioning aspects like twist, altered perspective, or different structure. And to reinforce their memory, the teacher projects several key points from the previous meeting, like and then they will do like a short true or false activity, and that is conducted with statements such as the teacher will say a fractured narrative always has a happy ending, and the student will decide whether the statement is true or false. And after this quick review, the teacher will move to the next session by saying, now that you have remembered what makes a fractured narrative unique, let's try to create your own version. And then they will move to the stage two, which is refreshing structure. So in this stage, the teacher will reanalyze one fracture story from the previous meeting, but this time they will focus on how it was written, particularly on its transition, tone, and logic. So together, the class will identify how the writer maintained coherence and where the twist is appeared. And after that, the teacher will demonstrate how to plan a fractured story using a story map on the board. For example, the original story might be Cinderella, and the twist idea is, what if the stepmother was the real victim? Then the story is, after that, the story will outline using structure, orientation, complication, resolution, and twist. So the student will actively contribute their ideas to this example, helping them to build a shared, the same understanding of the process on making fracture narrative. And then to the stage three, in this stage, the activity will be the teacher and student collaboratively create one short fracture narrative about 80 to 100 words, where student can suggest sentence, words, or alternative endings, while the teacher tries write their own ideas on the board. And after completing the story, the class discuss questions like, how did we make this story different, and which part gives the twist? And the teacher will highlight the examples of good language use and creative thinking that is found in their work. And after that, they will move to the stage 4, where the student is now already understand the process. So they move to the independent practice. They will work in pair to choose a familiar fairy tale or folk tale and plan their fracture fashion using a story map or outline. And after they make the story map or outline, they will draft a short fracture story of about 150 until 200 words. And once the draft is finished, they will change the pairs, exchange pair stories to get a peer feedback from another pair. And the feedback will focus on clarity, structure, and creativity. And after receiving the feedback, the student will revise their stories and also receive brief comments from the teacher to refine their final draft. And the final stage, which is stage 5, finally the teacher will select a few pairs to present or read aloud their fracture narrative in front of the class. And after each presentation, the class will discuss the class will discuss questions such as how does your twist change the message of moral of the story, and what can we learn from creating alternative or perspective. And after the stage 5 is ended, as a closing reflection, each student will write 3 to 4 sentences about how creating fractured narrative helps them to think differently about storytelling and creativity. Next will be assessment will be presented by my friends.
So the assessment is this criteria, identification of narrative structure and twist, and method using worksheet and presentation. So the next is writing, use coherent structure and creativity criteria, and using writing task method. Next is collaboration component, using participation criteria and using observation method. And the last is reflection component, using criteria depth insight and written reflection method.
Okay. We think that's all from us. Thank you for the attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.